One of my favorite things in the world to do is watch Friends. I know it's been off for years and years. It's not even around, but I still find myself binge watching old episodes. And I was thinking about this today and thinking, it's the predictability of the friends in the circle, right? You have Chandler with his quirkiness, Monica with her type A of just everything has to be so neat and tidy and organized. It's Phoebe's ability to make you laugh at her silly songs. Ross always comes in with those smart comments, and Joey and him and his food, like it is just so hilarious. And of course, Rachel, she just brings everybody together, and it's just such this beautiful, cohesive team of people. And it's why I wanted to come on and share with you today that I have an opportunity for you to find your friends in the content creation space. So if you are thinking about creating your first or your next digital course, I don't want you to miss this opportunity because Amy Porterfield just opened the doors for registration for her Course Confident Bootcamp. And I'm actually offering a special bonus for anyone that registers for the Course Confident Bootcamp through my special link. So I want you to go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register. That's crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And what you're going to find when you get there is I have this special bonus private podcast series. It's called Money Mindset for Creators. So I want you to go register for Amy's bootcamp, download the podcast, and immediately start listening to it, because what this training is set up to do is to help you get your mind right about monetizing your content, making money so that you can fuel your content creation dreams. So go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register for Course Confident. And I cannot wait for you to find your friends and find the people that will be there for you. Do you see what I did there? Yeah, nice little friends segue connection. Go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And I cannot wait to see you inside. Okay, let's get into today's episode. Today's episode is actually one of the things I'm going to tell you not to do on a regular basis. So today I'm taking a training that was previously all on video, and I'm turning it into an episode for you. And the reason why I don't recommend this as a strategy to use often on your podcast is because there are some visuals involved in the presentation that I gave. So stripping the audio out is going to leave you wondering, well, what is she talking about? And I can't actually see those pictures, and I don't know exactly what this looks like. But the reason why I'm reusing this piece of content is because it is so good. It is so good. It is a podcast ads deep dive training, and it's something that I'm really proud of in the sense of people are always asking me about podcast ads. How do you use them? What is dynamic content? What are baked in ads? Can you explain more about all the things? And so I have taken this training and I'm sharing it here with you today. But the good news is I have a few clips that I'll link to in the show notes where you can go and watch pieces, like snippets of the video, to really get that impact of the most important pieces of this training. So let's get right to it. Welcome to the Profit Podcast, where we teach entrepreneurs how to start, launch, and market their podcast. I'm your host, Crystal Profit, and I'm so excited that you're here. Thanks for hanging out with me today, because if you've been trying to figure out the world of podcasting, think of this show as the time-saving shortcut you've been looking for. So let's get right to it, shall we? I love talking about podcasting. If you're brand new to me, I'll get into kind of my background here in a little bit, but podcast ads in particular, I think feel like a really big mystery for a lot of people, and especially if you're going to do them on your own. It's one thing if you're going to work with a big corporate sponsor and you have branded content, but if you just want to create these for your own products, then I'm going to blow your mind today. I hope that I'm going to blow your mind with all the information that I'm going to share from my own experiences working with my own self-sponsored product ads, but also with some sponsored content as well. So wherever you are in your journey, I promise you're going to learn something new here today. So again, if you are watching on the replay, then make sure you reach out if you have any questions, but we are going to get started because today's training is all about how to sell your own products on your podcast. This is going to be a deep dive into self-sponsored ads, but podcast ads in general. So I'm going to probably say it multiple times throughout the training, but if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. But before we really get started, I'd love to know where everybody is in their podcast journey. So tell me in the comments whether you are new or you're a seasoned podcaster. That way we can really understand where everybody is that's here today live, and we can answer some of the questions that a brand new podcaster would have. Or if you're like, no, Crystal, I've been doing this for a while. I've gotten my feet wet. I'm just here to learn more about podcast ads. So tell me in the comments whether you are new or you're seasoned. And I would love to know where everybody stands. That way I can, like I said, cater a little bit about what we're teaching today towards what the presentation is. Okay, awesome. So Michelle says new, not just new. She's new. So she's taking my course. Awesome, Michelle. I can't wait to hear more about what you think about profit podcasting. This is my online course. This training here today is probably going to be a little bit more intense than what you would find in my program, simply because what I teach in there is for new people, like Michelle says. So Leah says, brand new. Latifa is new. Vanessa is new, not started yet. Okay, awesome. I produced my first podcast in the past 2 weeks. It's a live stream show that's repurposed, but I'm looking into doing my own solo in the next few weeks. Awesome. I do podcast production for B2B coaches with membership program. Okay, this is fantastic. I love that we have kind of across the board with a lot of people being new and some people that have recently launched or that help other podcasters. Because even if you're not doing these things here today yet, this training will help you avoid a lot of mistakes that I do see podcasters making, or that I've made myself whenever I first got started selling things on my podcast. So today's training, I want you to walk away from this training with an understanding of how podcast ads work, which types to use for your show, and an action plan to start using them ASAP. I'm actually going to do a deep dive behind the scenes of what it looks like what my podcast ads have looked like in the past and what it looks like today. Like I just wrapped up a few pretty big launches that were for my own programs, as well as an affiliate launch, which we're going to talk about the different types here in a second. But I really just want you to walk away from this training not confused. That's my biggest goal, is I don't want you to leave here saying, I just have way more information than I did before I got there, and now I'm just confused. So again, if you have any questions at any time, put the letter Q in front of it, and then that way it'll stand out to me, and I'll be able to go back and grab it in the chat. So yeah, this is going to be so much fun. So hi, Kim. So happy that you're here. She just released episode 16. Kim's one of my students, and she's been a member of our community for a while. So happy that you're here. And this is going to be really helpful as you get your podcast up and running into the next phase of growing and scaling it. And then new to podcast, but seasoned summit producer. Awesome. So you have a very specific skill set that will translate well to podcasting. So I hope as you think about selling your own products, that this information will be really helpful. So happy that y'all are here today. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm going to go full screen here for a second. So at this point in my podcasting journey, I have published more than 725 podcast episodes, which feels a little chaotic and insane. And it has been a little bit, but I just love podcasting so much. So I have my weekly show, the Profit Podcast, where episodes come out every Tuesday and Thursday. And then I have my daily show, the Potty Report, which is a 5-minute or less show that airs Monday through Friday. Then I won the Outstanding Solo Podcast Award at the Spark Christian Podcast Conference back in 2020, which was just a really fun way to, I love solo podcast, but I also love the blend of helping other entrepreneurs. And I've helped hundreds of entrepreneurs at this point get their podcast up and running in 30 days or less. I've also been a guest speaker on many of the large podcast stages, including Podcast Movement, She Podcast, and Podfest. And I am the author of the Amazon bestseller, Start a Binge-Worthy Podcast. So as you can imagine, I'm just obsessed with podcasting. I really am. I'm obsessed with podcasting. I'm obsessed with marketing. And this is why I wanted to bring this podcast ads training to everyone here today, because this was a very big mystery to me. I felt a little dumb that I didn't know how podcast ads worked other than the podcasts that I listened to. I'm a big podcast listener, as I'm sure a lot of people that are watching this today are as well. And all I knew was what I heard on other people's podcasts, which of course, most of the shows that I listen to, the popular ones, get millions of downloads and they have thousands of listeners and they have a lot of ad revenue coming in the back door to speak about these ads and promote these products. I didn't have any of that. I didn't have a whole studio production team behind me. I just knew I'm an observer. This is one of the ways that I learn and watch people. And that is the mentality that I want a lot of you here today to have. If you're brand new, you're like, I haven't even launched my show. It's on my goals for 2022. That's awesome. I want you to watch and observe and kind of take in some of the things that will be helpful to you. But like I said, my main goal is for you to leave here not confused about podcast ads. So sound good? Y'all let me know, because we are about to get started. So tell me in the comments, I'm ready, or tell me I'm here, I'm listening, you're excited to get started, whatever it is. Tell me in the comments what your thoughts are about podcast ads, because we are going to dive in and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the journey that we're going on today. So the first thing that we're going to cover is the types of products to sell. Now, I'm not going to get too granular in, how to create a product, what that looks like, because that's not my specialty. At the end of the day, yes, I've written books, I've hosted events, I've created courses, I've done different things, but I want to just tell you broadly about the types of products that I have sold on my podcast and how I've done it. So we're going to keep that pretty high level, but then we're going to dive a little bit deeper into podcast ads. This is where I want to get granular and answer your specific questions, because this was the big mystery to me. Which one do you use? How does it work? What does this look like on the back end? Like the actual audio production. We're going to go through that, as well as how to create your own ads. I'm going to give you a few step-by-step processes and pull back the curtain so you can see what it looks like to actually create podcast ads. And then we are going to go into a customized plan for you, because I'm going to show you, like I said, the behind the scenes of what this looks like when you piece together the content calendar and the different pieces of what my podcast looks like for the Profit Podcast. Oh, I love this. I am ready. I'm excited. Everybody said, yeah, I'm excited. Latifa, Michelle says, let's do this. I'm excited too, keen to know the best way to position sponsor ads if there's more than one. Okay, this is a great question, Colin. So if you can ask this again, put a Q in front of it. That way it doesn't get lost in the mix, because we are going to talk briefly about sponsored content and what that can look like. So if you have a specific question that you want answered about sponsored or branded content, put that in the chat. That way we can get that specific question answered. Okay, so that's our journey. Oh, and by the way, we're going to do Q&A at the end. So if you have any podcast questions, it doesn't have to be just about podcast ads and what we're talking about today. But if you have any questions about podcasting, put a Q in front of it. We're going to have the Q&A session at the end. Y'all, this is going to be so much fun. So let's dive right in. If you're taking notes, now is the time. Now is the time to take notes, whether it's pen and paper, it's a Google Doc, whatever it is time to break it down. Because if you're brand new to podcasting, but you know that you want to eventually use your podcast as part of your business or part of something that will eventually turn into a business, then I want you to watch today's training with an open mind of, well, what if? Or how can this work for me in the future? Even if you're like, I'm just here to take it all in, I want you to start thinking of what this could look like for your podcast and your show. And then if you do currently have a podcast, or like Cecilia said, she's helping other podcasters, then I want you to explore some of today's training with a fresh eye and a fresh perspective that it's all about trying new things and experimenting when it comes to creating ads. I have learned so many things by trial and error. Y'all, so many things that have worked really well. And some things I was like, that's just, don't ever do that again. So I hope that translates in what you learned today with podcast ads. So the first thing, and I'm going to go full screen here for a second. So what are you selling? Now, this is a breakdown of the types of products. So like I said, if you're brand new, let's just take it all in and think about what if. If you currently have a podcast, think of the different ways you can use these approaches, whether it's books or events or courses, programs, memberships. There are so many different products, especially when it comes in the digital space, that you can sell on your podcast. But I also want you thinking about affiliate promotions and sponsored content. I know today's training is really more about a deep dive of self-sponsored content, but I feel like we'd be doing a disservice to you if we didn't talk about all of the possibilities, because everybody is here with the mentality that one day your show is going to be a huge success, right? Like you're thinking about this, right? I mean, I'm thinking about this. I'm already thinking about what it's going to be like whenever my show does have millions of downloads, tens of thousands of listeners. And so I want to think about what are the foundational pieces I need to have in place for whenever one of my episodes goes viral or something is shared many times to just the right person that needs to hear them, who is someone is a potential customer for myself. So again, I want you to decide which of these are going to be relevant for you and your show. So let's dive into selling your own products. So I want to just break it down to the very basics, right? So if you're going to be selling your own products on your podcast, you're going to need to have the product created. And I know that this sounds like kind of like, well, duh, Crystal, why, you can't sell something that's not created. Well, you need to at least to have a sales page. Now, I'm gonna use Kim as an example because I know her podcast, I know her audience. So she helps authors promote their book. So for someone that is probably not going to have a book, like a physical copy ready to sell for a certain amount of time, what they would need to do, they as in the authors or the podcaster who wants to sell a book, they need to have some sort of sales page up to start driving traffic there. Even if there's nothing available to sell at the moment, maybe it's a waitlist page or a pre-order page, but you have to have something that is ready to go before you can start talking about it on your podcast. Now, real fast, let's go back to me being a marketing nerd, and I love the idea of teasing things out before they're actually ready. Like I'm actually working on another book and I'm working on a brand new program, and you will hear me talk about them on my podcast, but that is not a direct ad because I don't have anything to sell. I don't even have the outline done for my new book. I don't even have anything recorded for this new program that I'm creating, but I'm already telling people about it. So teasing content out is always something that you can do as you start to develop a course, develop an event that you want to have. Maybe in 2022, you're like, summer 2022, it's coming. Start teasing it out now. And then when it's a few weeks leading up to that event or whenever you want to start selling it, that is when you would want to create the actual ad for it. Does that make sense? Let me know if y'all have any questions about really just having the product or a sales page ready to go before you start talking about it on your podcast. Then the next thing you want to do is develop those calls to actions or a sales funnel. Now, this will look different depending on what you're actually selling, or if it's is it a live experience? Is it a pre-recorded course? Is it something they have to do by a certain time? Is there a date involved that they have to pre-order? Or it's going to look different for everybody, which is why, like I said, I wanted to keep this pretty broad because there's so many different rabbit holes that we can go down. But if you have any specific questions, put them in the chat and I'll be sure to address those. But developing a call to action can be as simple as, okay, I want people to go to my website, or I want people to go to this specific URL. We're going to talk about URLs here in a second. They're very important. But I want you to start thinking about what is the thing that you want them to do, and how can you make that very clear? Because you want it to be, at the end of the day, something that someone hears and they know, this is what this person wants me to do. This is a very clear call to action that I want to make. Okay?
Being a woman in business comes with its own unique set of challenges, but also so many opportunities. We get ahead by leaning in to what makes us different from business as usual. I'm Samantha Hartley, host of Profitable Joyful Consulting, inviting you to a special 6-episode series exploring the experience of being a woman in business. You want to hear from women consultants who've hit $1 million, who sell 6-figure engagements, or who've broken their own revenue ceilings? Yeah, those are my clients, and they'll be sharing too. Join me for 6 must-listen episodes that tackle key challenges for women consultants.
Follow Profitable Joyful Consulting on your favorite podcast app.
And then you share it on your podcast. I love this graphic. I was so happy that I found this graphic because she looks like somebody that I would want to talk to. And if she throws some freckles on her, and I feel like we could be sisters, yeah, I love this graphic. But so one of the biggest mistakes that I see people make whenever they're selling anything on their podcast is not having a clear call to action. Whether it's having a messy URL or talking in circles around what you want people to do, you don't want to be confusing. I cannot iterate this enough, because when I hear people say, oh, I tried selling one thing on my podcast one time and it didn't work, and then I listened to what they actually said in their call to action, I'm like, yeah, that people don't know what to do. You didn't make it clear what it is that they were signing up for, or what it is that they should be buying, or what you wanted them to do. So you want to make sure that it's super, super clear. So y'all put in the chat if y'all have any comments about that. But we are going to move on to affiliate promotions. I love affiliate promotions. And the reason why I throw this in with talking about self-sponsored content, and this may surprise y'all. If anybody is brand new to me, then this is definitely going to be news to you. But for anybody that follows me, and I tell them I make up to 90% of my revenue with affiliate promotions. It doesn't come from just my own products and services. Yes, I have courses, I have books, I have all these other things, but I make the bulk of my revenue every year in affiliate promotions. So I don't want you just thinking about, oh gosh, I have this course I want to create, but I don't have time to do it. Or I have a book that I want to write, but it's not ready yet. Or I have this event that's coming up in 6 months, so I can't sell anything yet. I want you to start thinking about brands and products and services, programs that you already use that you could be an affiliate for. So for example, I have a hosting platform that is Buzzsprout. If you followed any of my content, you're probably familiar with them. It's my favorite hosting platform, and I'm an affiliate for them. I use Squadcast. This is my interview platform that I use to record interviews with my guests. I could just keep going on and on. Canva, ConvertKit, all the things, all of my favorite programs I'm an affiliate for, but I treat those promotions just as I would if I were selling my own product. So your homework, one of your assignments for today, because I'm going to give you lots of homework. Your first assignment is to see, are there any programs or products or services that you're affiliated with that you could start promoting on your podcast? It is different than sponsored content. We'll get to that in a second. But this is where I told y'all, it's like we're going to talk about links. Links are one of my biggest pet peeves. If you have an ugly URL or it looks like if I click on that, my whole computer will get a virus, I will not click on them. This is like a very hardcore thing that's ingrained in me. I don't know why. Maybe it's a weird thing, but I like to have a nice, clean link. And if you're brand new to having an online business or being in the online world, the two platforms that I recommend you do this, if you are a WordPress user or if you have a WordPress site, you can use a tool called Pretty Links. This is the one that I prefer to use for all of my promotions because it's easy to say, hey, you can check out my course. Go to crystalprofit.com/course to learn more about profit podcasting. It's as simple as that. So you don't want to have someone say, okay, go to my website. It's this /EHDCK, wait, what? It's confusing. You don't want that to happen. The other short link creator that I like is Bitly, Bitly. This is great for creating those affiliate links. And you can do this for your own programs too, if you don't have a clean URL. But it's very important because you want it to be something that's easy for you to say, but also it's simple for your listeners to actually go and do that. So tell me in the comments if anybody is here, do you have a website for your podcast, or do you have your own website that you could eventually use to promote your own products and links and things like that from? Because you don't have to have a website to make this happen, but I'm just curious to see where everybody kind of is with having their own links. This is a big one. This is a really, really big one. And Latifa, I see you have a question. I'm going to answer your question about affiliate promotions. So I want you to follow the FTC guidelines on affiliate disclaimers. I had to make its own slide because I am so obsessed with making sure I'm not breaking the law, because there are certain things that you have to disclose, and there's different types of disclaimers that you have to have out there, but you have to have one if you're promoting someone else's products or service and you're going to make a commission on it. So you can go to the FTC website and see what that is. A lot of these have to do with where people are actually clicking the link. You just have a disclaimer that says, this post or this page contains affiliate links. If a purchase is made after you click a link, I may make a small commission at no extra cost to you. If you want to go to my website and look at any of my podcast episodes, you will see that. Or you could go to your phone wherever you listen to my podcast, because I do have affiliate links in most of my podcast episodes. And there's a small disclaimer that Buzzsprout puts on there as well that says, hey, by the way, this is an affiliate link. So just know that about affiliates. So Latifa says, should you use affiliate promotions outside of your niche? For example, I have a family podcast. Should I promote podcasting links? So this is a really good question, Latifa. And I think that you have to stick to what your audience wants. So my podcast is about podcasting. I know, super meta, but I like to start promoting things that I know my audience will use. So I'm not a big fan of doing very general things like mattress ads or something like that I'll hear a lot of these other bigger branded sponsors do, simply because they'll probably be interested in that, but they'll hear it on another podcast. I want to talk about the tools that I use for my show. So if you have a family podcast, you could talk about some of your podcasting links if that's what your audience would be into. But I think maybe it would be better to promote something that, is more family oriented. Maybe there's some type of events that are in your local area that you could promote, or maybe, there's another kind of app that you would encourage that would have affiliate promotions. But do your own research when it comes to what would work best for your audience, or start asking your audience, what products and services do you use right now? Or what do you want to learn more about? That's always a great place to start to see what would be a good fit for your audience. Okay, and then the last one, share it on your podcast. So it's very much similar to what your self-sponsored ads are going to look like. So you're going to find a product or service, you're going to generate that unique URL, and usually the affiliate program or product will have this for you. But then you want to take that, make it pretty, make it where it's not messy, and then share that on your podcast. Okay, sponsored content. So what is the brand or the sponsor that you want to work with? Now, this is going to vary from industry to industry, and it's also going to vary on how big your podcasting platform is. So you do get rewarded. The more downloads you have, then you are more, I guess, appetizing is the right word to use to sponsors, because they know that if they advertise with you, they're going to be seen by a bigger number of people. So that's really where sponsored content works into play. I haven't done a ton of sponsored content on my podcast. I've done a few videos on my YouTube channel, and I can tell you, you want to make sure, going back to what Latifah's question was about affiliate promotions, you want to make sure that it's something that's aligned with your audience. I get pitched all the time for people wanting to sponsor something or have me promote things. But at the end of the day, I have my audience's best interest, because if I start annoying them with products that they would never use or they don't care about, there's a good chance they may stop listening. So I am very careful in picking and choosing which sponsors and which brands I choose to work with. But it's the same thing. You need to decide on the ads that you want to use and or your calls to action. Now, with sponsored content, it's a little bit different. Since they're paying you to promote something on their show, you'll typically work together with them to develop a script or a rough outline of what you need to say. Usually it's that call to action where it's like, hey, I'm going to share a personal story about how to use this product. Then I'm going to make the plug here, and then the call to action here, and then here's the link. You can listen to any podcast that has sponsored content to kind of get an idea of what people say in their episodes. And then again, you're going to share it on your podcast. So that's really the simplest breakdown of how sponsored content works. Let me know if y'all have any other questions about that. But we are going to move into the types of podcast ads to create. And this is where we'll probably breeze through these pretty quickly, because a lot of these things are, you probably heard about them or you know what they are without knowing the technical names for them, but we're going to break them down really simply. So what is your ad style? So as we go through these, I want you to think of which one would I feel most comfortable using. So deciding on which type of ads to use for your podcast can be confusing. I get that. What should I use at the beginning, in the middle, and the end? Should I do it all the time? Should I do it every once in a while? So I want you to decide which style is going to work best for you and your show. So here are all the different types of ads. Don't worry, I have some illustrations, not illustrations, that was the wrong word. I did not draw these. You will be so grateful that I did not draw any of these pictures. My kindergartner has way better handwriting than I do. But we are going to go through what pre-roll is, mid-roll, post-roll, and self-sponsored and branded content is something we've kind of already covered. But if you have any other questions about those, then don't be afraid to ask. So this is what a podcast episode looks like that has a pre-roll ad in the actual episode. We're going to talk about baked in ads versus dynamic content in a second, but I wanted you to have a visual so you can see at the very beginning. Let me make this full screen. So you can see at the very beginning, this part right here is what your pre-roll would be for this episode. So it's the audio clip, the audio file that you see or hear at the very beginning. And then you have maybe some main music that you always play, and then you have the rest of the episode here. So that is what a pre-roll ad means. It's the pre meaning the beginning or before, and it's happening before the entire episode really begins. Then we have mid-roll. Now, this is actually an example of what I used to do a long time ago with all of my mid-roll ads. So you can see there is actually a break right here. This is a full episode, and I did like a clean cut right here and right here, which, by the way, if y'all have any questions about that, it took me a second to figure out exactly when to put the mid-roll in an episode. And I find it just comes with listening to your own and do, like, if you're doing your own editing, because I know a lot of people are, you can't hire a production studio yet. But I think that it's always good to kind of find that spot in between segments, or if you're talking about something and then you're switching gears, or you have a good pause where you're like, okay, now we're going to talk about, that's where you would want to put a mid-roll. It's not necessarily, oh, it's a 30-minute episode, so I need to put it right at the 15-minute mark. I don't think that there's a sweet spot for exactly where to put the mid-roll, but that's what it would look like. So a mid-roll is right in the middle of an episode. And then, of course, the post-roll is what you would put at the end. There's not an actual audio file right here, but what you could do if this was a baked-in piece of content, which we're going to talk about next, then that's what you would see right here. It may not even be pre-recorded. It may just be something that you say at the end of a podcast episode. Maybe it's part of your script and you just know, okay, I have this book promotion coming up, so I'm going to make sure that I talk about that at the end of the episode. So there's a few different ways to look at ads, but I just wanted to make sure the definitions are very clear. So y'all tell me in the chat if that makes sense. Say, I'm with you, or you got it, I got it, something along those lines. That way I know that we are all on the same page when it comes to the definitions of podcast ad types and what you will most commonly see in the podcasting space, whether it's, and you'll notice these now, when you start listening to podcasts, you'll say, oh, that was a pre-roll ad. Oh, that was a mid-roll. Oh, that was a post-roll. Like that was at the very end. You'll start to notice these things and you'll learn, do I want to have that for my episode that way, or should I do it this way? So I want you to start thinking about those now as you develop ads for your own podcast. Okay, yeah, Colin's with us. Got it. Thanks. So happy that you're here. And back to the question about websites. I love that you have your own website. I have a website. Colin says, I have a website. I have a few websites. Okay, this is great. So y'all will understand my emphasis on having the pretty links. I don't know what it is. It is legitimately just one of those things where it's just a pet peeve of mine. It's a pet peeve. Okay, Michelle is giving us the A-OK. All right, I'm so happy that y'all are getting this. All right, so let's go to the different types of ads. I would love if y'all would post in the comments which one you would find most effective for your podcast. Which one are you like, man, I really think I want to try this one first, because you got to pick one. I don't recommend doing a pre-roll, mid-roll, and post-roll for your very first ad, because that doesn't really leave a lot of room for you to test things out. I like to experiment and test. There's a lot of trial and error that happens with my podcast. And what I did for a while is like, you know what? I'm going to do pre-rolls, just pre-rolls for a while and see how effective they are. And I could measure that by seeing, are people actually going to this URL that I mentioned? And then I thought, well, let me try a mid-roll to see if this works better, or is it too jarring to stop the conversation, mid-sentence and put in a mid-roll ad. And then of course, post-roll is another option as well. Okay, so Colin says he's going to be trying mid-roll. Awesome. And I think that, like I said, it depends on whether it's a solo episode or an interview, but mid-roll is definitely a way to get your listeners' attention because they're most likely listening. If they're in the middle of the episode, they're already listening, and I find those to be really, really effective. So Latifa said she's going to try the post-roll. Awesome. I love that y'all are ready. Y'all are energized. You're ready to start creating some ads. Okay. So let's get into how to create your own ads and what you need to know to make this happen. So creating your own ads. So how do I make these myself? Like logistically, right? How do I actually make this happen? And we're going to talk about how to create your own action plan and really put into effect. But I want to talk about two more options that you have for your ads. I've mentioned baked in ads many times, as well as dynamic content. And I want you to not be afraid to use multiple approaches, because for me in my promotional calendar, I look at what is going to be most effective, what's not going to be annoying. This is one of people's biggest fears. They tell me, well, I don't do my own ads because I don't want to annoy my audience. And I say, Well, we need to have some mental mindset shifts anyway, because your audience is already listening to you. You're only going to annoy them by offering something to them that doesn't make sense. This is why I find mattress ads annoying. I'm like, I don't need to buy a mattress. So if you work for a mattress company, if you own a mattress company, I'm sorry, but I will not be buying a mattress from you. We have one. We're good. We're solid, right? I don't need to buy one for a few years. But that's how I feel about it. That's the only time I ever get annoyed by an ad. If it's something that's not relevant for me or my business or what I'm doing or anything that I'm interested in. So don't be afraid to take multiple approaches with your ads. So let's break this down. Baked in ads. So what this looks like is you actually recording your podcast ad. I say that in quotes because it's really just an audio file, but it's recorded audio clips that are inserted before the audio is actually happening, like before the published episode, and you're creating this audio file to upload to your podcast host. This is either pre-recorded, or you could say something like, hey, you know what? We're going to take a break so we can talk about whatever it is that you're selling. But it's baked in to the actual audio file and not uploaded separately into your podcast host. It could be recorded at a different time than your whole interview or your solo episode, but it is uploaded into the final product whenever you put it into your podcast hosting platform. So then you're going to edit it and you're going to export it. And then, and you can additionally add music. I talked about this one here in a second. And so here is an example. Oh, wait, hang on. I'm jumping ahead of myself. I have an example of what baked in ads look like, but this is the next step, is importing it into the actual podcast episode. And then you would upload it into your podcast hosting provider. So in other words, you're going to record an audio file, add it to your existing podcast episode you already created, and then you're going to import that into the episode and export it. I know there's importing, exporting. Let me just show you an example. This will make a lot more sense. So this mid-roll ad is a baked-in ad. This actually, hang on, I'm like, where's my cursor? There it is. So this was recorded after I completed this solo episode. So I recorded this on its own like wavelength in its own file. And I have an example of what it looks like in a second of what an ad will look like. So I record the ad, I added music in the background, then I exported that and I imported it into this episode. I know, import, export, all the things, right? Like I said, I'm trying to keep this high level, but if you have specific questions about these things, please don't walk away confused. I want you to ask your questions. But I imported this finalized ad into a podcast episode, and that's a baked in ad for mid-roll. Oh my gosh, y'all. Import, export, all the things. We're going to talk about dynamic content because this is actually the one that I prefer. So I did all that about baked in ads. This is what I prefer simply because it's available. Now, Buzzsprout is it's my podcast hosting platform. There are other hosting platforms that allow you to do dynamic content as well. But I know Buzzsprout is maybe one of the only ones that this is available for all of their user accounts. So you don't have to have, pay an extra $100 to use dynamic content. It's available on their $12 a month plan or their $24 a month plan. So it's available to all their users. But I have a lot of content on my YouTube channel about dynamic content with Buzzsprout. So if you want to see how this works, I have a graphic here in a second I'm going to share with you. But if you want to go on a deep dive of I want to do dynamic content, then I would advise going to my YouTube channel and seeing the different pieces of content that I have there, because there's a lot of tutorials of how you can use the pre-roll, and the post-roll. And this is just my favorite feature. Y'all, I just came off of two really big launches. I had a 5-day podcast challenge in August, as well as an affiliate launch that I did in September. And I used all dynamic content. Oh my gosh. And it was so easy. And this is my absolute favorite thing to talk about. I love it. So we're rolling into the last part of our training because we are going to talk about creating a custom plan for your podcast. Now, I want you to look at this as this is what Crystal does. It doesn't have to be what I do, but I want you to walk away with some ideas. Because at the end of the day, my rule is there are no rules in podcasting, okay? There are some guidelines that you can follow, even all the things that I've shared here with you today. I don't want you to say, here's a template, I have to go follow exactly what Crystal says. I want you to take the bits and pieces of it that make sense for you, your show, and your audience, and then use the things that will work well for you. Because maybe post-roll ads will work fantastic for you. Maybe mid-roll will annoy your audience, and maybe pre-roll is the best option for you. I can't say what your audience will prefer, but I want you to develop a plan. At the very, very least, develop a plan for your podcast. So what is the plan? What does even having a plan look like? So now that you're familiar with all of the podcast ad basics, let me show you how this has worked for my show, because I'm going to show you some of my podcast ads from the past, which you've kind of already seen some of those files, the recent affiliate promotion that I did, as well as how I plan out my podcast ads today. So learn and observe and decide what can actually work for you and your show. All right, y'all, let me know if you're ready here in the chat. Say, I'm ready. Let's do this. Give me an emoji. Tell me something in the comments that lets me know y'all are still here with me. And if you're watching on the replay, like I said, at any time, if you have any questions, there's going to be a button for you to send me a DM on Instagram, and I'd be happy to answer your specific questions. Just say, hey, I came from the podcast ads training. I'm confused. I would love for you to clarify this point, and I'd be happy to help you. Latifah's ready. She says, I am ready to go. So happy that y'all are here and so excited about this. Okay, I'm going to go full screen because y'all need to see this. This is my Google Sheets. This is my podcast content calendar. It is not fancy. It is very simple. All I do is, this is for quarter 3 of 2021. I do everything by quarter. And what I have here is a simple column that has the day that the episode will air. This is for the Profit Podcast. Then I have the actual date that the episode airs. Then I have the topic. This is not necessarily the end title, but it's generally speaking what the topic is going to be about. And then I'll, create the better title later. Then I have my episode numbers, as well as a column for dynamic content. Now, I could go into so much more detail about how promotional calendars work and content calendars. I have a lot of this content. If you want to go to my YouTube channel and see how I use Asana and Google Sheets together, that's a really good one if you want to know how my brain works around content. But what I really want to point out is right in here, y'all, I have put a piece of dynamic content. There's not a day where there's not a piece of dynamic content on my podcast, because it's a tool that I really think is effective for my listeners, because I change it. I don't put a piece of content out there. As you can see, like there's different ones like for a week or two, and then I change it to something else. I don't want it to be the same thing over and over again, because I think that is another way that you can annoy your audience. Back to, no one wants to annoy their audience. I like to change it up every few episodes, but if you only produce about 4 episodes a month, then I would consider changing it once or twice a month. You don't have to do it every single week, but I think it's a really cool tool for you to use. So if I'm going into planning things, like I have a few workshops coming up in the next few weeks, I will create dynamic content around those workshops. And then in my content calendar, I have a place to kind of note where it is. That way I know, well, how long has that audio file been out there? Like, has it been too long? Because sometimes I don't remember how long it's been out there or when I need to change it. And it also kind of cues me the next time I go to record, oh yeah, I need to record that piece of dynamic content for the upcoming promotion. So it's really helpful just to have a simple column. And like I said, I like to keep things simple. I like a Google Sheet for my content calendar. This is another way that I stay organized. I have an ads folder for in my Google Drive. So if you go into my podcast Google Drive, this is what you would see. I have a place for all of my episodes. I teach this in my podcasting course, by the way, for anybody that's like, how in the world? Like it looks so organized, so professional. Well, there was a lot of trial and error through this. And I teach this in my course, as well as I talk about this in my book, Start a Binge-Worthy Podcast, for anybody that wants to know how to stay organized on the back end of your podcast. But I have a specific folder for ads, and the breakdown looks like this. So I have a folder for self-sponsored ads as well as affiliate ads, this promo blitz and promo swaps. These are for members of our community, as well as I had a special promotion with our membership, the Potty People. So I like to keep everything organized. That way, if I need to reuse something, or if I want to know, how did I do that promotion last year? I have a few affiliate promotions that I do that will come around every year, or they're cyclical, right? They'll come around every few months. And I like to go back and listen to those. I don't want it to be necessarily the exact same thing, but I can go back and listen to it and get some ideas and inspiration on how I've done it in the past and whether it was successful or not. So this is my ads breakdown. I told y'all I was going to give you all the full behind the scenes. So this is what a self-sponsored ad looks like. If you follow me and you participated in our 5-day podcast challenge, then this is what one of the dynamic content pieces looked like. When people ask me, well, how long should these ads be, right? The podcast ads. Let me go full screen so you can see the whole thing. This from here to here is it's under 2 minutes. The sweet spot that I have found is 30 to 90 seconds. So whenever I record my self-sponsored ad, hey, you need to go and, go buy this book, or go pre-order our course, or go sign up for our membership, then you can do that in 30 to 90 seconds easily. If you're talking longer than that, hang on, let's have a little bit closer face to face. If you're talking for 5 minutes about something, and it's in every single episode, I can almost guarantee you people are skipping through that. They're like, yeah, this is great. Yeah, okay, it's too long. When does the episode start? When does the episode start? And I can say that because I do that. I do that on podcasts that I listen to. I'm like, this is great. This is fantastic, but I don't care. This isn't for me. I want you to explore ways that you can market your own product, services, affiliate promotions, even your sponsored content to your audience in a way that will entertain them, keep them engaged, and have them actually taking those calls to action that you're making in your podcast ads. So I'll get off my soapbox. Step down from the soapbox. I'm here. We are just going to continue on. Okay, so this is an example of what a baked-in ad looked like whenever I launched my book. So actually, as of yesterday, I celebrated my book turning 1 year old. So Start a Binge-Worthy Podcast released last year. But this is what episode 201 looked like whenever I was in the launch mode. So this one actually says, Start a Binge-Worthy Podcast after launch ad. So I had specific calls to action for the pre-order and the pre-launch. And then after the launch actually aired, the book is out, you can buy it. I had a different ad to put on there. So again, this is kind of that top of mind marketing where I'm not saying the same thing over and over again. I recorded a different piece of content and put it at the beginning of episodes. So I wasn't annoying my audience. It was something different. Even if it was the same message and the same call to action, it was a different audio file. Okay, here's dynamic content. So if y'all have never used this, y'all will probably be really excited to see this. I know I was. I totally geeked out whenever I saw this for the first time. So this is actually in my Buzzsprout account. This is what it looks like on the back end. And this is their dynamic content library. So this is what I've promoted over the last, I would say, 5 to 6 months. And it has like how long it was, how many different plays that it is. And actually, I can go back in and apply these to the pre-roll or the post-roll of my podcast if I wanted to. So right now, I'm in the middle of, when I took this screenshot, I'm doing a promo swap with one of our listeners who actually happens to be one of our course. She is part of the Profit Podcasting course. And I had told her, I was like, if you send me an audio clip, I'm going to put it in the podcast. Well, she sent me one and it's on the podcast right now. So if you're listening to this, watching this in real time, you can actually hear that there is somebody else at the beginning of my show. And that is what we call a promo swap. You can go learn more, go listen to the Profit Podcast and hear about how promo swaps work. But I just wanted to show you the back end of what it looks like whenever you're uploading a pre-roll. You could do up to 5 minutes, or a post-roll. You could also do up to 5 minutes here. So that's 10 extra minutes that you could upload. Now it's going to count if you're a Buzzsprout user, it will count against how much time you're allotted every month. But y'all, it is such an amazing feature because it applies to every single episode I've ever had. Every episode. Like I said, I just hit episode 300 today. As of me recording this, we just hit episode 300. So the ad that I have on my pre-roll goes all the way back to episode 1. So if somebody finds my podcast today and they're like, oh, I found she talked about this one episode about explicit content. This is one of my top downloaded episodes. What is explicit podcast content? If they listen to that one, which I believe I published more than a year, maybe a year and a half ago, they'll hear this ad that I have for today. Like, this is why dynamic content I get so excited about it, because from a marketing standpoint, you can continue to reach listeners that find you organically, or maybe you even have paid traffic going towards these old episodes, but it allows you to reach them with what you're currently promoting or what you're currently selling. It is my favorite thing to talk about. It's why I have so much content about it, because it just gets me so fired up. So dynamic content, huge fan of it. And it's just so amazing. Well, I hope you learned something new about podcast ads today. Please reach out if you have any other questions. Go and watch the video clips that are in the show notes. Go to crystalprofit.com/episode 307 to check it out. I would love to hear from you. And if you have any other questions about podcast ads or very specific questions about podcast ads, don't hesitate to reach out. You can take a screenshot where you're listening and tag me on Instagram. Send me a DM. I'm at crystalprofittx, and I would love to hear what you thought about today's episode. But that's all I have for you today. So make sure you hit that subscribe or follow button wherever you are listening to this podcast. And as always, remember, keep it up. We all have to start somewhere. Hey, Profit Podcast listeners. Thanks for sticking around to a little bit after the episode to hear this special message, because I want to hear from you. We are starting a new segment called Fan Mail Shoutouts, and I want to hear from you, and I want to hear your questions. What do you want to know? What questions have you been dying to ask me? So here's how to make this happen. Go to the app where you're listening to this podcast right now. Go there. I'll wait a second. Okay. Now, once you're there, you're going to see a hyperlink at the top of the episode description that says, send Crystal a text message. And that's all I want you to do. Send me a text. It could be casual, informal. It could be totally anonymous. Or if you want, you can include your name and the name of your podcast or content wherever you are creating, and I will give you a special shout out in an upcoming episode. So again, go to the show notes for where you're listening to this episode right now, and it will say, send Crystal a text message. And I cannot wait to hear from you and give you a shout out in an upcoming segment of Fan Mail Shoutouts.